What's up, party people? This is my Carbonda FM936. I've done 2 videos on this previously. The first one, I did a ride video, so a ride impression, and this thing shreds. The second one, I did a bike check, and today's gonna be the third one, where I roast this thing. By the end of the video, I will let you know if I would buy this bike again. This thing's been fun, but it does have some things that I do want to make sure you're aware of to inform you before you purchase. Stay tuned for more, because I'm bringing the heat. Bring in the heat.
What I'm talking about.
Alright, well, once again, thank you for joining my channel. My name is Toby, and I'm taking you along for the ride. And today we are going to be roasting this Carbonda. Now, roast might be a bit of a strong word. I'm just gonna let you know what I found out that I'm not a huge fan of. And so let's get right into it. Before we do, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. It totally helps me out. And apparently asking for it helps. I feel weird doing that. The first thing to point out is this thing is freaking long. So I got a size medium, and this reach is 475 millimeters. If that's something that you're interested in, I think it really adds to the aggressive trail nature of it, but man, it's really long and you're stretched out there pretty far. And that's even with the shortest bar and stem combo that I can find. You can see this is an integrated Synchros knockoff. I mean, this whole bike is knockoff, but it handles great, but man, it's pretty long. And so for a dedicated XC bike, I'm just not so sure you'd want to be that stretched out. For a trail bike, it works great. But that brings up the second point. If you're looking for a trail bike, you need this thing to be able to handle big hits. And I keep finding that this shock area needs some serious reconsideration. The way the suspension works is on a big hit, it'll support you super well through probably 80 or 90% of the travel. That last 10%, it bottoms out freaking hard. Makes your skin crawl hard. And I'm really not a fan of that.
See, a little bit of a bottom out right there. Oh yeah, that was a bottom out. That was a bottom out. Heck yeah.
Because what I'm guessing is happening is that this flex stay actually hits sort of a transition point and is able to actually encourage the shock to bottom out. It's jarring. If you're not a really aggressive rider, that's not a problem. If you're going to be running this as a trail bike, this is a 165 millimeter stroke shock, because I'm running this in the 42.5 millimeter stroke version, and it's spec'd for a 40. With that 42.5, many people don't have this problem, but I seem to. I actually contact the seat tube right here on those bottom outs. I thought it was because I bent this top shock bolt. One of the major reasons that I think that this does get covered, like these two features get covered in grime, and there's so little clearance at full bottom out, that I think this might just be dirt. .5 at full bottom out. A little bit of daylight left in there. That thing is tight enough that at full bottom out, just a layer of dirt is actually going to be contacting your frame. And if you go around the other side, look at that. You could drive a Mack truck through the clearance on that tire. I don't know. This seat stay bridge needs to scoot back. I'm really just not a fan of that. Coming back to the shock again, I would like it if you could fit a more robust shock in there. Something with, you know, like a piggyback or maybe a bigger reservoir. I'm sure I could. I mean, look at the Norco Optic. You could fit a really robust shock in there and have plenty of clearance. Also don't have very much room to clean it down here, so dirt and debris and everything can get trapped down there, and that's not very awesome. Another thing to talk about is this dropper post. This is a 170 millimeter dropper post that I was running, and then I started having issues with it. And the issues I was having was because the actuator down here was actually contacting this pivot point. And so I found this out during a race where my seat just started ever so slightly lowering, so charging hard, and my seat's lowering and I can't figure out why my legs are so smoked. I actually ended up having to drop this travel and scoot the seat post up because I didn't want to deal with that anymore. Just be cautious to not slam it all the way to the bottom, and I am down to I think 150 millimeter travel on this. Let's talk about noise on the trail for a second here. This internal routing is horrendously loud. I could not fit any sort of dampening system in there, foam, whatnot. If anybody has any ideas, I'd love to try them, because I could not come up with a good way to get these cables quiet. I can pick it up and slap it on the ground and you can hear them rattling around in there. This is just a really loud system, to the point where if I'm really gonna run this again this summer, I might honestly take out the internal routing and run it external just to quiet the damn thing down. The actual chainstay itself, you'll notice I cut up a tire and glued a tire to the top. The reason I did that as opposed to wrapping it is because with as hard as I'm riding this, I wanted to be able to see if any cracks developed. So I had an inner tube wrapped around there, and I just didn't like the idea of not being able to see it and observe it. So I actually ended up gluing. The chain rattles around and hits this thing a lot, and so you'll just want to be very careful of that. Make sure that before you really ride it, you get some sort of protector on there, because it needs it, and it needs it bad. I do wish that they would give you some sort of tool accessory so you can mount, you know, your tube or whatnot down here. Would be really nice. As it sits now, I've just got this lizard strap keeping my tube on there. It would be nice to have a mount. The biggest thing that I am really not a fan of with this bike is the fasteners. This one's okay, but this main pivot here, the actual depth of that Allen head, it's awful. Same with this pivot right here, and then these. I don't know why they got such cheap ass fasteners, but I mean, you're really close to stripping all of these out if you ever have to adjust them. And these are little Torx bits, and so you might not actually have those on your trail tool. You can swap those out at a local hardware store. And in my first video, my ride impressions video, I actually point out that I have replaced this axle, because the axle that came with it, the depth of that Allen feature was so shallow that I had to replace it because it was getting worn out. This is a wolf tooth component. This is great quality axle. Like, if you get this bike, replace the chainstay, or get some chainstay protector, and get yourself a new axle before you even start riding. When I talk about this hardware, one of the biggest issues is this bolt right here. There is a slight amount of play in my pivot right here. You can feel the rocker move separate from the eyelet. I can actually feel that when I'm riding. Like, whenever I unweight the whole bike, it's just an ever so slight pop, and that just drives me insane. I've replaced this eyelet. Everything's torqued to spec, everything's tight, and sure enough, you can still feel that ever so slight amount of slop in the chassis. That's concerning. I don't know if everybody else has that problem, and maybe I've just worn this thing out, but I have that problem. I think maybe the last point to point out is that if you're gonna buy something like this, just know the resale value is crap. Like, if I replace this bike, I basically just have to keep the frame, because nobody's gonna buy a used catalog frame, no matter how good a condition it is, no matter what, unless you mark it at a price point that is absurdly low. And even then, I wouldn't buy an absurdly low price point for a carbon bike. I just wouldn't do that. So keep in mind that's what you're getting yourself into when you buy one of these bikes. Now, with all that being said, would I buy this thing again? And the answer to that is absolutely. This thing rips. I really enjoy riding this bike, and for what I bought it for, a cheap, small travel trail bike, it's basically just balling on a budget. It delivers. It really does. This is a fun bike to ride, and I've really enjoyed myself on this. I think my skill set, riding style, and riding terrain are starting to eclipse this thing. So I spent a lot of time on the big bike this last season and was really pushing it hard on that thing. And now when I come onto this, it just makes me a little bit nervous to ride this thing. And so I'm just riding this too hard for what it's intended for. When you push it just that little bit, it does make me nervous. And if you're in a position where you're not riding crazy aggressive trails, or you're not doing very big hits, and you're looking for a great small travel trail bike, this thing's incredible. I mean, I've had so much fun on this. If I go travel anywhere, this is the bike that I bring. I mean, there's some issues with it, sure, I point them out, but I still ride this thing. I still ride this thing quite a bit and have had so much fun. And it hasn't failed me yet. Well, that's the last video I'm going to be doing on this Carbonda bike. I feel like I've talked this thing to death. But if I missed anything or you got any more questions, leave them down below. In my other video, I've been getting a lot of feedback on it, and it's awesome seeing people ask questions, getting answers, and giving me feedback on their bikes that they've bought. I don't know how to end these videos, but hopefully you can get out and ride.